Let's quickly talk about Chapter 8 of Part 3, the voyage to Lagodo, where we're on the island of Gllvr, where the Emperor is being summoning the long dead for Gulliver, who Gulliver asks for Aristotle and Homer, and finds that a lot of the other dead, especially a lot of the other dead who were responsible for interpreting their works, really keep off because they're conscious of how poor of a job they did. And indeed, Homer is fairly patient with them, but Aristotle's just like, gets presented with a couple of chief, expositors of his stuff, and is like, are there any, is there anyone better than these dunces? So we get that. We also get him looking back. It's like, oh, I'm curious to get like, the noble families and trace their lineage back generation after generation, except that a lot of these noble families quickly veer off into the, I guess maybe the actual genetics, where it's like a yeoman, or it's various people, cardinal, they've been, I guess it's the implication is they've been cheating. That or they've been elevated, but I think it's more like they've been cheating and stuff like that, and they don't. Also seeing where, like, oh, he can see where all the vices have come in, why they deserve a chin like this or stuff like that. Later, he talks about how, like, basically all humankind has gotten, Europe has been contaminated and degraded by kind of all the venereal diseases that have gone through the generations, and made for terrible people. And he says, like, oh, and he goes back to like the yeoman kind of pure, simple yeoman, simplicity of diet and thing, and they're kind of like, they're noble and kind of, strapping things, but like, oh, as we go forward, he sees that their ancestors have quickly sold their virtue for, vote, or for basically, as they've become more equal, got more privileges, they too have become horribly corrupt. It is definitely definitely one of these things where I was surprised to find the idea that, like, oh, nobody gets rewarded for their merit. I think it's a Roman fellow who is like a ship's captain at Actium, did great battles, and then went back to Rome to the court of Augustus to ask for a better ship because he'd done so well, and gets denied that. It gets given to somebody who doesn't even know anything about the sea. And he gets his own ship taken away from him for negligence, having left his ship to go ask for stuff. So he ends up retiring to a very poor village, poor farm, and dying there, kind of unregarded. So that's how heroes, and that's echoes throughout the age of, like, he calls up all these kind of great lords and ministers, like, we never reward virtue and stuff like that. And in fact, it seems to be the thing of, like, human virtue and stuff like that is the greatest impediment to actually running this highly corrupt machine. So we would never actually advance anyone who showed any virtue or anything like that. So yes, that is this chapter, this happy chapter of Gulliver's Travels, where we'll continue along. I think we finished with Glubbdubdrib.